Hello, everybody. Hi, thank you so much for joining me. My name is Alyssia. I am the host of Intentiality on Awake TV, founder of Ascended Warrior, where spirituality and science come together to bring that left brain, that warrior type of personality into the spiritual world for healing and for growth. And I have with me a wonderful guest today. We've got Ty Gold, the spirit messenger. Ty is going to be sharing with us all about past lives, why they are so important to what we're doing now, to where we are now with what's going on at the globe. There's so much information in past lives. And Ty, thank you so much for joining me. If you would give everybody a little background while I try to figure out where this video is on Facebook and share it out.
I appreciate it. When you do find it, send me the link too. Yeah, so as Chris said, my name is Ty, the Spirit Messenger. The gold part happened recently. I got married last year, so I'm really feeling into that. It's an exciting last name. I was basically formerly taught and trained by the divine and have been for the past 8 years. I'm the creator of an online spiritual academy called Messengers of Spirit, where I delightfully have received the guidance from the divine and offer out into the world the process of divine communication. And I use teaching, healing, and guidance with an online series of courses on the academy to teach people how to communicate with spirit like I do. And one of the reasons why I want to do that is because I think that the more we are tapped into our own various forms of intuitive ability, intuition, our clairs, and the more we are spirit guided, guided by our guardian angels and spirit guides, that we live a life that we're really passionate about and that really matters, and that we're more heart-centered, and we're creating from a very inspired place. And for me, that encompasses making the world a better place. That's kind of my contribution. And because I was a skeptic 10, 11 years ago and kind of woke up to the guidance of my guardian angels and spirit guides, I am of the belief that if I can do this, anybody can. And so I really delight and cherish the opportunities to meet people that might be on that bridge of I'm not really sure about that, or maybe even just getting started, and kind of carrying them over. I'm not real strapped into the woo-woo. I like to use a lot of science and resources and data with my stuff, because when the divine started teaching me this stuff, I was like, I need validations. I need proof. This is too much. You got to be kidding me. This can't be right. But it is. It's real and it's wonderful. And my life is exceptionally magical. And I get to work with really amazing people doing really awesome stuff. And I'm excited today to talk about past lives. So, you know how each one of us when we were kids, especially hindsight being 2020, we each have like different maybe spiritual gifts or modalities that started in our childhood, and maybe we had the type of parents that encouraged us and helped us to harness it, and maybe we didn't. But a lot of people that I meet, a lot of their budding gifts kind of showed up in childhood, whether they realized it or not. So my weird one was, as a child, I could pick up on people's past lives. I thought we all knew each other's past lives. So this made me a really challenging kid to have over at your house on the weekends when I would stay the night with friends, because I would be talking about how a friend of mine, I have a distinct memory. A friend of mine was afraid to take a bath, and her mom was like, you need to get in the tub. You need to get in the tub. We were like 7, 8, 9 years old. And she was like, I hate baths and I hate getting my hair wet underwater. And I remember telling her, well, that's because you drowned in the pond behind your house when you were little. Don't you remember? Like, my young mind thought, of course she would remember that. So then she went out and asked her mom, because obviously if that happened, your mom would know that, right? Oh. And so she went out and said, Mom, Ty said that this happened, and what is she talking about? Do you remember that? And so needless to say, after a few of those kind of encounters, I just stopped talking about it because it got really awkward. I realized all people didn't have an association with their past lives. And so when my spirituality started budding later in like 2012, even though I had always had an interest in past lives, and a restless need to know more about them. Obviously, like I studied Brian Weiss and Edgar Cayce, or like the first things I just started gobbling up when I started dipping my toes in this water. And it just kind of reawakened all of that for me. That's when I realized that not everybody has immediate, like upon birth, doesn't have like immediate access or awareness to past lives. But being a spirit messenger for the last 7-8 years, I've gotten a very clear perception of why this information is useful and why it's like valid. It's not just like novelty or interesting. Like I'm all about the transformation of the human experience, like evolving and growing. And so getting this information it became useful for the guidance I give people and the transformations that they were having. And so that's what made me want to explore it on an even deeper level. I've met people for a while. I was doing like the psychic fair and reading circuits, and I met readers that were great at tuning into people's past lives and giving them that information. But what I realized is not every soul is in a place where they can actually handle it. And so I feel like conversations around it are really important, the delivery method, and then how can we use this information in a process where it helps an evolution of the spirit, rather than just like, oh, you were this in a past life and isn't that cool. But I've learned so much because the divine taught me. I picked up on things through the guidance I was giving people. So like one of the first, this was when my intuition was really starting to come on, like Wi-Fi. One of the first people I gave a little message, a hint of insight in regards to their past lives. I remember the divine saying to me that she first injured a spot on her knee while she was on the trip of the Mayflower crossing over. And to this day, in this lifetime, she still has a scar. She keeps re-encountering an injury on the same spot on her knee. And so she has this scar. So this was one of those moments where it just validated the insight that I was getting. Obviously, she didn't use that information to grow into a better, brighter person today. But it just from an intuitive standpoint, it showed me how even scars, birthmarks on our body, things can show up again and again. And that's helped me a lot with the healing work that I've done.
Birthmarks is a fascinating one, and I've got kind of a weird E on my arm, and I always used to joke to my younger sister's name is Emmy that it was for her. But we all have these markers on us that speak to other times, things in our personality that we quite frankly shouldn't have given our upbringing. Memories and dreams that are completely outside of our scope of reality. And that's what makes past lives so fascinating, is that they do touch you in this life.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine what it would be like to be able to see somebody and get those flashes, that insight of where they were and where they came from. Incredible gift. It's so hard for a child. I can't even imagine.
Well, I think I was about 10 when I was like, all right, we're going to shut this down. Because by then I had enough odd experiences. For example, so a lot of times when you have a fear, an unexplainable fear, it's usually rooted in a past life trauma.
Right.
So my mom, when I was younger, she still has this fear, but it was really prevalent when I was younger, of driving over a bridge. She would literally, as the driver, because I was a child, she would literally hold her breath and lift her feet. And I mean, what does that tell you? I mean, this is not a taught behavior.
Yeah.
And I saw her in like a Ford Model T car in a previous lifetime going off a bridge, and she did perish in that lifetime. And I literally saw the whole thing. The Ford Model Ts back then, their wheels couldn't handle like real rocky surfaces. So it was actually a big rock that she had driven over, and it tossed the trajectory, and she went off the bridge. So for her, in her mind, she had this inexplainable fear in this lifetime. And I obviously didn't know what to do about that, but those are that's some of the stuff that I can actually help people with in this lifetime, so you can heal past those fears.
Yeah.
And obviously my forte at this point is spiritual development and helping people kind of open up and embrace like their clairs and their divine communication. So every time someone was punished for being spiritual, or hanged, or burned at the stake, or gone through imprisonment for claiming that they received a message from the divine, in one way or another, it leaves like a traumatic imprint. And so when I meet these people, they have a desire to learn, they're excited about it, but there's a part of them that still believes it's not safe for me to do this. And so a lot of the I call them source activations, I'm able to kind of tune in and get the guidance or the information or the scene from the past life, and then creator and I start commanding and clearing the trauma from that past life. So their nervousness or resistance about showing up in this lifetime and being spiritual or doing that thing, it lifts, it goes away.
You see that so much, especially with all the people waking up now. That fear, that ingrained fear about coming out in the public and really making yourself vulnerable to ridicule, it's not really founded in reality for us anymore. There's so many spiritual people out there. There shouldn't be that stigma, but that's fear that comes from being persecuted for so many lifetimes.
I mean, people have been stoned. We see scenes in movies, I guess, and that's how it shows up for me when I tune into these past lives. It literally looks like a scene from a movie, and I'm always just blown away. And it makes sense to me. Like, of course, you have a fear. I mean, if you were stoned to death by society, of course you have a fear about telling someone that you received a message from an angel, like that.
It's pretty justified fear.
Yeah. But my work keeps me really, really busy because of all of the awakenings, and because the divine, the world needs our support right now. And so a lot of people are getting like activated or called into work, like we were talking about before. And so it's really important for me, I think, to meet them at certain junctures and kind of help them cross the hurdle so that they can jump into the vibe that's on this planet right now, the energy, the current story.
Yeah, absolutely right. One of the things that I always hear from people asking about past lives is their family. Do families travel with you from life to life?
I see that a lot. I do. But I also have seen, I would say probably 70% of the time or more, there is a bit of like I would almost call it like a family triangle where you guys swap out different positions. So mother and daughter will trade roles. I see a lot of husband and wife be brother and sisters or cousins in past lives. So for sure. But I've also seen a lot of, especially I would say in the last like 35, 40 years, a lot of star seeds get implanted in certain families to kind of help them grow out of a recurring theme or pattern where they're not evolving. So a lot of these souls that consider themselves to be star seeds, they feel like they're like stuck in this lifetime with people they don't find familiar or recognize, and their soul's not really being fed or nurtured. They feel like the outcast or the black sheep, and it's really because their energy, a lot of times they don't have to do anything profound or significant, but just their presence in that construct, in that mold, shatters the glass and something new gets established and formed. So that's another thing that I've seen.
I know a lot of people talk about star seeds incarnating from one planet or another. Now, have you seen incarnations from multiple planets? a mix of, you've got the Pleiadian and the Syrian in your past lives.
Yeah, and some of those are almost like the grandfather. Some of the, I would say, like planetary structures, or they're like the grandparent to, I think, like Arcturians. I didn't study all this, so I just receive it according to each particular person. But I'm pretty sure that we're like the Earth is like the youngest of the paradigm. So we have a lot of other generational beings that offer us a ton of support. Yeah, but definitely there's a very eclectic mix incarnated on Earth right now. And another thing that I found is how do I want to phrase this? The term came to me the last couple of hours, and I want to preface it by saying I have a very weird sense of humor sometimes. So if I say something, it's not meant to be a derogatory term. It's just kind of like my team's sense of humor with all of it. But there are some of us that are almost like a cosmic mutt, like there were multiple contributions of galactic, in different proportions. Some of us did like traveling and teaching in other galaxies too. So we would have been imprinted on by different societies in different lifetimes. This is making the conversation take another weird turn, but I mean, you can imagine it. I think a lot of the stuff just makes us who we are. We each have a special signature. Our own, energy is our unique signature. So you may notice for a period of time that you get along with like a group of people, and then either your life changes, or you do a little bit of maturing and growing up, and you don't necessarily fit that same group of people, that same social structure that you might have before. And I consider that like a similar experience where people might identify or recognize that.
So how would you recommend, what would your advice be for people who are interested in past lives? How can they kind of dip their toe in and see what they've been and where they've been?
I think the greatest resource that I would suggest for people is meditation, to ask about their own. So because I'm so passionate about divine communication, these are questions you can get answered by your divine support team. As I have grown a lot in the last 7 or 8 years, I can tell you I've gotten past life information from my spirit guides, from Archangel Uriel, and even Merlin. Merlin showed up for me a couple years ago in a meditation. I didn't even know. I mean, I knew he was a figure in a historical figure and in storybooks, but I didn't realize that he would like an ascended master figure. He showed up in a meditation, and he started working on this chakra above my head. I was like, "What are you doing?" He said, "This is your soul star chakra, and it's going to help help you unlock like latent talents and gifts and codes that you're going to need to access while you're in this lifetime. But it's also going to allow you to receive more support from beings on this planet and beyond that would be very supportive in your growth." So I'm a big believer that each of us have access through our divine support team and that soul star chakra to receive guidance and information about our own previous lives. And that was the resource I would go to. What I can tell you, because of the paradigm shift, the only way that we can gain access to other people's past lives, like intuitively, how you probably have heard like the Hall of Akashic Records and stuff like that. And I want to say to you, I received this download earlier today, so they apparently wanted this in this conversation. The Akashic Records, or like the Hall of Akashic Records, that is the figure of speech almost. It's kind of a location in our mind where this information has been stored or kept. And it's often been referred to by like the light keepers. But the reality is it's almost like its own grid of information. And you can access this through your consciousness. And for some people, it might look like almost like a spider web of information. But if you are causing harm to yourself or causing harm to others, or you're not respecting the rights and free will of others, you're going to be locked out of accessing that.
Oh, makes sense.
Yeah, because
that asking for permission that you talk about, it's sacred information.
Right.
That absolutely makes sense.
And somebody with the wrong intentions could cause a lot of harm. And I don't believe before the paradigm shift, I don't believe that access was denied people. And I think that's why you had malevolent intentions by people who had like abilities and actually performed like dark arts and things like that. But the paradigm's shifting. And if you don't have the best of intentions, you know, to serve to the highest and best good of another individual, from what I've received, you won't have access to that web of information or consciousness.
Right. We've got a couple questions coming.
Sure.
I just want, for anybody who's just joining us, thank you so much. Again, we've got Ty Gold on the line. She's talking to us all about past lives, how to get in touch with those. If you are just tuning in, please share this video out. Whoever shares it out the most will get a free Akashic Record session, which actually ties really into what we were just talking about.
Really?
Yes.
Nice.
I take a Akashic Academy. I'm at the Akashic Academy with Emily Harrison, so I do Akashic Record sessions. So share this video out. If you have any questions for Ty, please let us know. And we do have a question from Teresa Marie. She says, what are the best practices for meditation in order to go deep?
Oh, I love that question. So this was like one of the first classes that I ever taught. And what I am going to preface this with saying first, there's like 7-8 billion people on the planet. My philosophy is there are 7 to 8 billion different kinds of paths to meditation. I feel like because of the evolution of each soul and because of what we've experienced in past lives, it's the perfect sweet spot formula is different for every single person. So for you, maybe you were a Tibetan monk in a past lifetime, and maybe the sound of water or the scent of incense really brings you to like a very calm and relaxed space. For some people, chanting Om, it's literally different for every single person. This is one of the things that when I mentor people, we go over because I'm able to tune into their spirit guides and their past lives and make recommendations that the divine offers to them. But just as like for the general population, I would ask you to pay really close attention to what you're consuming in regards to like coffee, cigarettes, alcohol, stuff like that, because it can really limit the depth of that, you getting to that sweet spot in that meditation. The other thing that I work with people a lot on is breathing, because of the trauma that people often experience in past lives to their physical body. If you take a deep breath in through the nose and gearing it toward the belly button, if you catch any shudders or if you notice that you shallow breathe, a lot of times this means that there was an injury in a previous lifetime, and not being able to get that full deep breath limits, again, you stay in a very shallow, very mind busy meditation. And the sweet spot that I call it feels like this, like it's this stillness right in the center. So I would definitely ask you to consider, if meditation is like a issue for you, that you actually reach out. Maybe we can talk about me mentoring you. But my biggest takeaways for people is, what is your breathing like? What are you listening to? A lot of people need a guided meditation to kind of walk them through the steps and to get the mind to shut off. For some people, it's about focusing on finding the perfect time of day for them. And then also, what your consumption is. But I literally teach a 5-week course on this because it's so specific to each individual. And then the mentorship that I offer around it actually has a lot of energy healing, because each individual has gone through so many things in their past lives. So if you're the type of person that loves to stare at water or listen to water, stare at fire, everybody has like their own thing. And so the biggest thing I like to encourage people to do is try it all. I can tell you my team has often steered people away from binaural beats. They're useful if you're trying to accomplish something in a short amount of time, but they're actually anxiety producing. And meditation is a training of the mind and the body and the breath. And when you use something like hemisync or binaural beats, it's almost trying to be like a faster access or gateway to get to something, but you're actually still not training the mind and the breath to work together. And if you're wanting training, teaching by your guardian angels and spirit guides, they can't dive in with that. I don't know if you know how binaural beats or hemisync works, but they operate off of a 2 different hertz kind of system, and it causes your brain to actually be really active.
Right.
So if the divine wants to whisper something to you, they come in almost like a cool wind. And if you are busy with like caffeine or sugar or binaural beats, it's really difficult to pass a note down to you down the hallway. So yeah, so this
that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, good.
It does. And I've used hemisync. I like the idea of hemisync.
Sure.
Specifically for what you're talking about, that shortcut. I'm not above cheating to get to go to cool places, but that's not what the masters teach you. They teach you about that silence, that balanced place that you talked about, where the information that's coming to you is from source. And it is different. It feels different.
It does, and it's very like centered. It feels anchored. And you actually end up having, I feel like, was almost like a sense of wholeness. So a lot of times my job is to help people troubleshoot that, because it's one of the most necessary ingredients to having a conversation with your guardian angels and spirit guides.
Beautiful. And I've got another person asking about Kundalini meditations. I think that was Teresa as well. Do you have any advice for Kundalini meditations? I know a lot of people are afraid of them, and they talk about them being too advanced for a lot of beginners. What are your thoughts on that one?
I honestly, that's not something that my team, that I've studied a lot. I know that I've done a lot of energy work on people over the years, and a byproduct of my energy transference and my energy sessions has kind of unlocked or awakened or opened their Kundalini. But the divine has, at this point, hasn't guided up till now. I haven't been guided to do anything more in regards to that. I know that for the people that I have been in a mentorship role with, where they're all healers, and that ended up being a pivotal moment for them to it made their personal transformation very fast, and it allowed them to access their healing abilities like lightning quick. So I can tell you, some of the benefits of it, and
like a leveling up almost.
Yeah, and it purifies. Once the Kundalini has been awakened in a person, it's really great at disintegrating and burning off a lot of self-sabotaging behaviors or breaking patterns. Like the people that I have worked with that have gone through this, their whole life has changed within the 6 months of it happening, like in every direction. So I don't know who offers that type of mentorship, but I would hope that they are being very mindful with it, because it could potentially be almost like a stick of dynamite for somebody if they're not in the right hands.
Yeah. one of the things that I've heard about past lives from my own family recently, as well as the Kundalini, because they all tie together so beautifully, is that we can tap into those past lives, not just for the negatives. We have these fears that we don't understand, but for the gifts that we have in those lives as well. Have you seen that?
Oh, definitely. So I started offering this workshop in person here in St. Pete recently, called Get Connected. And I have all these different courses that I've created over the years. And then I offered this workshop that was just like a nice mix of a little bit of each of the courses. And shoot, I just lost the question. Tell me the question that you asked me again. I'm so sorry.
Pulling.
Oh, yeah.
Having the ability to pull gifts from those other lives.
Yeah. So a couple of things about that. So the divine guided me to offer these intuitive profiles for people. And so I started in the workshop, and then I made it available to the people in my Facebook group. But it gives me I get guidance around the past life that has the most positive influence in this lifetime now, and a past life that is maybe causing the most restriction into this lifetime now. And then it also tells me like what clairs or evolving skills or gifts intuitively that they would have, meditation information if their team wants them to make adjustments. So definitely there's lots and lots of past lives that are super beneficial to us, and many of them where we had skills. I mean, somebody I just had a mentorship call with yesterday, apparently she had a precognitive premonition ability kind of similar to Nostradamus. And so her team was wanting her she started to reawaken it, but they're wanting to work with her on bringing this even more to fruition. But she came into this lifetime, and this is another conversation we should probably dive into today. She came in with a lot of karmic debt. I'm pretty sure she spent a lot of lifetimes being exceptionally spiritual, but she was involved with societies or maybe religions, or was practicing different forms like bruja and other that wasn't necessarily always of the highest and serving the highest good of each individual. Sometimes those practices allow people to serve the highest good of themselves at the cost of someone else. And so when you practice certain types of spirituality and you maybe disregard the free will of others, or you cross some lines. So when you come into this lifetime, you have some debt to iron out. And so that's something that she and I are working toward. So the divine explained to her that her contract was being negotiated. So this might be interesting for you to find out. So you can kind of receive almost like a get out of jail free card with the divine if you understand the lessons of your past, which a lot of times you're going to need to get involved with an intuitive or a healer to do that, or train to communicate with your own A team so that they can help you understand what's happened. But when you decide to change your ways and live a life in service to humanity, respecting the rights and free will of others, then you can actually kind of have the rebalancing done for you by the divine. You can go through a bit of a state of grace where they eliminate a lot of that, what would have been coming around for you. But definitely, I meet so many people that were doing such amazing things in their previous lives, and they're showing up and almost kind of picking the ropes back up where they were. So for them, a lot of times they'll sign up for classes and not really need the material. They almost like attain the information without actually going through it, and it's really just that their heart and mind needed like permission to do this and to kind of like reawaken it. So you'll see people maybe sign up for a class, maybe go for 2 of them, and then end up out of the class and zooming past it because it's just actually reawakened a latent skill or talent from a previous lifetime that they had.
That's a beautiful way of looking at it. I've definitely found myself in that position. I'll sign up for these wonderful courses and I'll get in there. I'm like, it's like flicking that switch back on, in a computer. Like, all right, you're now rewired, go with God. that idea of having to deal with our karmic contracts is huge. It's so important, and that's both good and bad, right? So can you tell us a little bit more about the karmic contracts and what that really entails?
So my work doesn't always evolve around the conversation of contracts. This is what I can tell you. So about 7 years ago, the divine asked me to meet. This lady reached out to me. I had known her from a church that I was going to, and she was like, I really think you can help me with this issue. So I meditated and asked my team, is it in my highest good and her highest good that we meet up? And they were like, absolutely, you're going to learn a new skill. So I always love going to class with my team. So I showed up and I met the lady and I heard. So my strongest ability has always been clairaudience. I thought it was my own voice inside my head coming up with wonderful stories and poetry and song lyrics, but come to find out it was my guardian angel Hope. So anyway, so I end up at the church with the lady and I hear very loud and clear, take her hands. So I took her hands and they started downloading to me all this information about a past life trauma or issue that she had. And they offered to essentially like wipe the slate clean of this issue so that she would no longer repeat the pattern from this point on if she was willing to receive kind of like this clearing or this healing. A lot of the patterns and cycles that we repeat today, right now, are very much influenced on the experiences that we had in our past lives. And obviously there's karma most likely around them, right? Because when we know better, we do better. But if we're stuck in a loop of this is my default programming, I go here, I go there, then this happens, then we don't always catch how much choosing could really be happening. So when the divine comes in and says, I'm gonna wash this trauma, this imprinting, this residue away for you, and now you're going to envelope or embrace, they're almost given like new programming, but it's up to them to actually implement it and integrate it. So the way the divine does it in those energetic exchanges is almost like a software pack that gets dropped off, like a update to your window, to your operating system. But it's really up to you whether or not you then open it. But what I can tell you is when people are in a similar situation and they go to repeat that pattern, they'll almost have like a pause and a reflection. There is a moment where it's like, are you sure that's how you feel? Are you sure this is what you want to do? Are you sure that's how you feel about it now? The energy won't be so automatic. You'll actually have a sense of, wait a minute. And you'll kind of pause. So a lot of the people that I do that kind of work with, the evidence shows up maybe even like the second or third time. Not everybody gets it on the first replay of that kind of experience. But as far as the karmic debt goes, obviously the people that I work with are mostly already signed up for living a life of service, heart-centered, serving the greater good of humanity. I don't get too many of those people that are like really stuck in a life of crime or like, you know what I mean? Like assaulting people or hurting people. I did have a client years ago, and I actually ended up telling this story just the other day. So I was like, I wonder if that's going to end up on the live stream. So I had a lady come to me, and this was before I really understood how much more help I can give people with this information and kind of transforming it into a higher level. This is when I was just kind of like giving out a ton of information. And so this lady came to me and she said, I don't understand why I've dealt with like my dad rejecting me, my family shunning me, just like people cutting her off, stealing from her. Like it's been an entire lifetime from her perspective of being like injured in some way or shut out, negative. And so obviously this was like a soul, a spirit that obviously I want to help her. What is that about? When I tuned in, they basically said that she had lived like the lifetime before. She literally lived a life of crime
Mm.
and like took other people's lives and held them against their will, and a lot of this was kind of karmic retribution. And unfortunately, I was in such a young stage of my providing service, I kind of left her in that state.
Mm.
And this is where I feel like, you know, when we know better, we do better. I kind of went back to the divine because I didn't want to give people information that they couldn't do anything with, and it would be super upsetting. So if I had that situation in front of me now, what I would ask I would tune into the divine and probably ask how this person could eliminate or make right these wrongs. But what I can tell you is when people dedicate themselves to a life of service, and really go through like their own internal inventory, taking ownership for the decisions that they're making in this life, then they see big things happen. Big grace periods happen. A lot of grace befalls those people. So did that answer your question?
It did. And I've definitely had those own moments in my life, specifically I'll share a little bit of my own story. So I had this pattern in my early life about females. I have a lot of contentious relationships and had a lot of contentious relationships growing up, starting with my mother and then aunts on my father's side, and just continued on and even chose a career in a male field.
Wow.
Consciously or subconsciously to stay away from females. It took a lot of work and a lot of past life progression to really switch in my head that this stuff wasn't happening to me. You know, I wasn't a victim, that I had a lesson to learn here, and that this pattern would continue to repeat itself until I faced it and dealt with it. And it's an incredibly profound moment when you're able to say, I got it. I don't want to keep repeating this pattern. And it's almost like releasing yourself from that debt.
Mm-hmm.
You're able to consciously say, okay, I don't need to repeat this anymore.
Yeah.
And just the weight off of your shoulders when you're able to do that is life-changing.
Yeah. And I, honestly, I can relate a bit to, I think it was very normal for females to be skeptical and not trusting. I've done a lot of work in the last few years on myself and my clients to kind of heal and bridge the bond in the feminine, in the collective. We were taught not to trust ourselves, each other. Like we've done a lot of harm to each other in a lot of different societies, in a lot of different lifetimes. And so, so much so, I channeled a whole conversation from goddess Isis months ago. Anyway, she did a whole activation and clearing through me, healing the divine feminine within, so that we could have better sisterhood bonds and relationships with each other, because that not trusting also made us not trust ourselves, our intuition, or be in touch with our emotions, or even be soft and nurturing to our inner child, or even our romantic partners. So the revelations that I felt like came through from just her conversation and her message around that felt so profound. It was really interesting. The day I was told to go do that, I went out on the beach, and this enormous like black sky rolled in, and the thunderclouds, and the whole thing is on the live stream, the video that I created. And that's a freebie. I can offer that to your group when we're done. But it allows women to work together and trust each other. Again, I had no idea how much resistance was there from previous lifetimes. And like I said, like in a sense, it's justified. We were lying to each other and backstabbing and turning each other in and telling on each other. And, so you can't escape the past. It just is. All we can do is kind of like honor it, accept it, and thank God we can transform the energy around it and move forward, because that doesn't have to be society standard anymore. I feel like we get to write society standards now with our efforts and what we believe. But when you have these trigger points that you can't trust women, or that being with females is not a safe place, or you don't get along, you create that reality.
Yeah.
Just in your energy.
And that's, when you're speaking, Spirit brought a term to mind that I'd never thought of before or heard of before, global karma.
Mm-hmm.
So karmic messages and lessons that we have to learn as humans,
mm-hmm.
as a whole.
Yeah.
Just the magnitude of what you're talking about with the divine feminine is so
mm-hmm.
true
mm-hmm.
on a global scale. And we are going to have to keep facing it as humans until we shift through that.
Right. Yeah. I think even in that conversation with the goddess Isis, she was even talking about how like us criticizing each other, in the way she ended up retraining that or like clearing it and then making it better, was what we would say about someone else would now be a reflection of what we're saying to ourselves.
Right.
And so there's just so much awareness. The gifts that they bestow, it's kind of difficult to sum it all up unless you're like hearing it like you just did with the global karma, or witnessing that. There's so many in 2020 guidance that I received last year was that we were going to have to work together. Large groups were going to have to work together in the year 2020 to accomplish great things. And one of the big barricades to that was this issue of resistance of women working with women.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the reasons I think Goddess Isis felt called to step up and be like, hey, you guys need this medicine.
It's so hard to really, we underestimate it so often, how much we hold each other back.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see it very clearly in a lot of the male-dominated fields, because there'll be that one woman. And where all these women work so hard, it's that fear of lack. And they become what we call in the military the keeper of the tabs. They don't want you to get in because they fought harder, they suffered more, you haven't done as much, you haven't paid your dues. It's like this whole fear-based culture around it
mm-hmm.
makes us sabotage each other, directly
mm-hmm.
sabotage each other, where we don't do that to males. It's fascinating, and I've absolutely been on the receiving end of it. And it's not really personal. It is just It's some fear-based thing that they've got to work through. And
it's thick in the spiritual community.
Yes.
It really is. And when I lean into the past lives, it makes sense. You think about like the Salem witch trials, like your own mother would sell you out.
Yeah.
Your own sister would tell the church about you. So, and I don't say that like with any animosity or judgment. Those were the times you thought you were saving somebody's soul, by telling the minister or the priest or whatever. So I'm just grateful that we're in the time the shift has happened, and we're in the time that we're in now. And Spirit keeps wanting me to have this other conversation about the contracts. Okay, so going back to that for just a minute, the conversation that I did have with my client the other night was that her soul contract was being negotiated. So the guidance that came in to explain that, and I haven't really received that for a client before, that the contract was being negotiated. The guidance I received was that as a soul, she came in to this lifetime with obviously certain attribute or skills that she had, but she didn't know necessarily about it. She didn't sign up in this lifetime to to do a lot of the magic stuff, let's call it, the intuitive, spiritual stuff. But spirit almost kind of like came knocking at her door, like, hey, you've got certain skills and attributes, maybe you don't know about them, but you do, that we could really use right now. And so if you're interested, we'd like to have you sign up to be a part of like this ongoing movement, this committee that makes great changes in this new earth paradigm. So even though that wasn't her, let's say, her soul's contract initially in this lifetime, I think that we're in a very profound period of time where the divine is renegotiating contracts, and maybe you can call it like the reserves being
I like that. Yeah.
okay,
Calling up the reserves.
Calling up the reserves. So I think one of the reasons that it's been part of her, I think, soul's contract to even work with me, because I feel like part of my signature coding and my imprinting is to always serve for the highest good of humanity. So I think her having those latent skills, talents, and abilities, but also the karmic debt, by her investing and saying, I'm going to do this with you for the next 6 months, it's going to put her soul and her abilities and what she then provides as a service to the planet, pretty much kind of like the highest evolution and possibility possible. So that was the guidance I got last night about her contract being negotiated. Also, she's entering the container, the spirit messenger training that I'm offering. So she'll be able to be under the tutelage and training of her own team. So I'm not going to be negotiating her contract. She and they are going to have that. I'm going to set up the phone lines so that they can help, so that they can have these conversations, and she'll have a better understanding about what it is that they're asking and what she's willing to say yes to. But I think that as long as she respects the free will, the rights of other people, and doesn't live a life of crime, and if she wants to go even greater, the bonus of helping to make this world that we live in a better place, then I think that she gets kind of washed away of some of the karmic debt. And some of it might still play out.
Yeah.
Some of it may.
And that's what an excellent message for so many of us, especially for those of us who didn't grow up thinking that we were going to be on a spiritual path. I never felt called to be a psychic or a healer. And until recently, I couldn't fathom myself even sharing the information that I'd learned. It's that chapter that we had in like the first, I guess until like 2012, roughly, that was a great chapter of our lives. Mm-hmm. Everything after, that's a new ballgame.
Yeah.
And you really can create your own adventure. And I'm mixing my metaphors.
No, I love it. I use that one a lot.
And I absolutely feel that way with myself. And I remember going to a psychic fair at Edgar Casey's group.
Nice.
And the woman was telling me how many lives I had and all the rest. And she's like, oh, well, you have gifts, but you're not really going to use them in this life, and you'll never have psychic abilities.
Wow.
And I remember agreeing with her. I was like, oh, you're absolutely right. I don't see anything. I don't hear anything. And now, 5 years later, these are things I rely on incredibly heavily. So it's so funny how that was my truth at that time when I did that. That is not my truth now. And that's absolutely the same for everybody out there. You can create your own adventure. If you want a life where you're in touch and you're hearing messages and you're doing all that other stuff, where you can get past your fears, that's completely possible. These things are right at your fingertips. It's having the intent, seeking out mentors that can help you along the way. It is a fascinating time to be alive because we have things accelerated for us in a way that others haven't.
And I think everyone has the ability to be intuitive.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I didn't know at the time. That's one of those keeper of the tab things. People will tell you got to be born with it.
Yeah. And, my philosophy is that we each are born with some very clear abilities, some clear knowings, some clear ways of receiving guidance or insight. But because everybody's is so different, it would be very difficult for like a mom or a teacher to tell you exactly what your intuitive language what that would feel like or be like, because everybody's just so different. So like I've met children who can see auras. I've met children that can see fairies. I've met children who can hear angel music. I've met so many children that have like these abilities. And obviously the rule is if you don't use it, you kind of I won't say you lose it, but like my knowing people's past lives, it kind of got boxed up and put on a shelf. I could access it if I wanted to, but it didn't. I was an administrator for daycares. Like I didn't need, I mean, what do you need that for? And
that would be a strange skill with the kids.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I know you.
Yeah, I really know you. Yeah. So yeah, so I think we all have them. And what I'm excited about is just training people to be more open to like the conversations around them. So the Get Connected workshop that I was telling you about, day one, we're just talking about how your intuition are just sensations in the body and you getting used to noticing them and feeling them. And for so many people who either they have body shame or they've gone through like abuse in this lifetime, a lot of people are very disassociated from their body. Yeah. Or they've stopped listening to their guidance. And so a lot of people come to me and they think it's going to be like all woo-woo. And I end up teaching them about their forgiveness, self-sabotage, and listening to your body's messages. But they're all part of the, your intuitive center is your heart, and that's your compass. And so if you're locked up with grief, I could sit here and talk to you all day about the clairs. But if you're not open to feeling and healing, you're not actually going to receive those impulses and receive that guidance and insight. That's probably a conversation for another day, but
you're so spot on. And it gives me chills just to hear you say that. That's 100% true. We aren't living from our hearts. We aren't taught to.
Yeah.
The rest of it is just not possible unless you can open up that heart center.
Yeah. But the body's receiving signals, whether it's your gut, whether it's your knowing. A lot of people feel it here, the tingles, the shivers, the goosebumps. I mean, the hair, whatever, where our body's already giving us signals. So in that workshop, it's a multi-series workshop that we do over several weeks. And I literally send them home with homework to pay attention to the signals, the messages that their body's receiving, because it's basically like 101 to intuition.
And
yeah,
I promise I will absolutely bring you back on to do an intuition
to do that conversation.
It's one of my favorite things in the world because it makes the world just feel more magical. It really does. Everything just feels more exciting and more joyful and more happy.
Right.
But you got to do the work to handle and to clear out the junk that you carry.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people put the ability to receive divine guidance like in this novelty box. Either you can do it or they can do it. Or you can't. I don't know if you probably do know this, you're such a history buff, but there were like certain religions that said we couldn't, women couldn't even read the Bible. So there are people literally in this lifetime now that I work with that they're tongue-tied, like in even speaking spiritual concepts or conversations or truths, because they are still kind of almost held captive by the beliefs and the rules of that previous lifetime. So it's amazing when I start working with these people and we do like maybe there's one healing process that I do called a karmic clearing, where I go in and we have like a list of themes, and creator and I go in and clear out all the junk and pretty much download new software. And a lot of it is about being spiritual in this lifetime and being safe and being accepted. And it makes such a huge difference.
And all of that's, not all of it, but most of that's internal as well. You learn to trust and love yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And once you do that, what other people think of you is just so much less important.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that was a big lesson for me. But I also think that when you enter the spiritual, for me, it's almost like a lifestyle. My commitment to meditate every day, my commitment to tune into Creator and ask, if this is this opportunity for my highest good. Like all of that is so different than the way that I used to behave. And then how do we carry that into like our social circles, right? And relate to other humans. And then how do we give each other room and space? Like your guidance is telling you one thing, my guidance is telling me something different. And how can we negotiate maybe us not agreeing, or so I find all of that so fascinating. So people really being willing to let someone else be in their wrong if they're right, or be in their stage, or and not feel like you need to fix it, shift it, handle it, or tell them about it. I think there is that really like heart expansive knowing and loving yourself, but that wanting to be accepted and not wanting to be judged, and negotiating all that in social circles. I think we'll see that being the next shift for like the next 5 years. People learning how to take the guidance that someone else is giving them, like that lady for you, with a grain of salt, and saying, oh, and this one, I could talk about this one all day. People come to me and they say, I know XYZ is truth because a psychic told me so. And nothing makes me want to like, it's truth. In my opinion, it's truth if source, the divine, or your soul told you so, right? Or you just have those truth signals and it was spoken to you and it lit up the whole way, right? If your body tells you so, like that to me is when it's true. For the skeptics out there, or I think that there are so many ways that a reading can go wrong, or that somebody can make a mistake in their interpretation, that I really hate to see people trust a psychic or an intuitive like 100%, because we are fallible, intuitive, like we can make mistakes. The guidance, we might be tired, somebody might have had too much to drink the night before, like whatever the situation. I would love to see people leaning more on their own guidance and intuition and calling that knowing, rather than what somebody else has told them. And I don't know if I'm going to be teaching this in a webinar coming up, and we just rescheduled everything. So now it's June, a free webinar called Connection. But one of the number one reasons why psychic readings or readers are incorrect is because of what's going on in your energy field.
How do you mean?
So each individual has their own energy field. And if you have thoughts and fears and imprints, and if a reader doesn't realize that she's tuning into your energy field, some people close their eyes and they're just getting guidance, and they're not actually aware of the source of that guidance. And there's lots of different locations that you could be, like networks you could be tapping into. And a person's energy field is the most faulty place to get information from. No offense, but we're dirty people. We're dirty beings. But like, if you were, like, for example, this has happened to one of my clients. She had a terrifying, paralyzing fear that the guy she was with was wrong for her. And she went to 3 psychics that all told her exactly her fear. You're with the wrong person. You need to leave him. So because my process is so different, I don't even get on a call with, I'm not actually even doing readings right now, but when I was doing guidance sessions for people, I tune into people's guardian angels and spirit guides, and ask, give me the highest level of information that would support this soul's growth in this lifetime. And I received pages and pages of notes about the person to provide on the call. So when I showed up to our call, I'm like, your team really loves this guy. And I told them I told the person all the things that your team said was going to be, that's positive for you, your children, your growth, your life. And she resonated with everything. She said, but how, like, one of the people is a well-named psychic. She paid like $500 for the reading. She was like, how did I get this wrong? And this is when my team woke me up in the middle of the night. They're like, you need to have a conversation with your audience called connection, so that people understand where the sources of information and are a little bit more aware of what people are tuning into. But bottom line is, if you have a reader that's tuning into your personal bubble, your energy field, the chances of that session being 100% accurate is not good. So because you held that belief that you probably didn't think you were intuitive, that's a good chance why that lady picked that up.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. And I call it now the tingle test.
Nice.
You get the tingles when you hear something.
Good.
Give you that shock of energy. Does your body kind of light up? And I've taught my niece this, the tingle test. It's like, if you're trying to pick out even anything in your life, food, give yourself a tingle test. What one makes your body feel good?
I love that.
And it's very much the same thing with messages that you get in meditation or things you hear from psychics. People always ask, is it coming from the right place? Where is this information coming from? Well, your body can tell you that.
Good.
What's your body telling you? Oh, it feels really good. Great.
Good.
It's coming from a good place. So I was like the tingle test.
I like that.
I learned that one, yes.
I like that. Well, just so you know, there's a lot of different like networks. I use networks because that's an association people can wrap their minds around of information, and tuning into, my philosophy is I always like to be I don't know about you, but I was like an A student. So I'm like, how can this be like the most accurate? And I like the information to come to me as quickly as possible too. And for me, the Divine's Wi-Fi is super, super fast. It's super fast. I can get it in the grocery store if I need to. And for me, just as a comparison, getting information from someone's like loved one is the slowest. It's like a dial up. It's like AOL for me. Like I can't, I'm like, can you? So I don't do a whole lot of like mediumship sessions anymore. It was like a drain on my energy system. And there's so many people. I cry through every connection that I do for someone's loved ones, because I hear the messages or see the thing first. And so I have piles of tissues and I'm sobbing. I've just decided that I have the ability, and I may use it from time to time. But there's other mediums out there that can provide that service at probably a much faster rate and better quality than I do.
And you talked about the innate gifts that we have, and we absolutely choose to go any direction we have. But like I said, if the mediumship is draining, great, someone else can do that for them. You've got many other things that you bring to the table as well.
Yeah, my advice for people is to figure out what is your strongest, like your biggest strength, and follow that. And it'll start unlocking others with exercise and trying. But I think a lot of times it takes a suggestion of someone else for someone to realize, like, ooh, that's a superpower or a gift, I'd like to try it. But definitely pay attention to like what excites you. So even like past lives, it's an awesome subject. And if somebody wants to learn like more, like tune into that network of information. And I hope I didn't contradict anything I totally forgot that you do like Akashic records. So my suggestion that it's like a field of consciousness of information that we can tap into. I hope that doesn't contradict with what you're okay. if somebody wants to do that, I would actually want to nudge them, like, what do you want to do this for? Because we've really transitioned past the information age. And I kind of feel like you in particular are one of those torches, one of those beacons of information. And I feel like the reason why the divine's using you like to be like such a scholar for people in this lifetime is because you're able to show people the parallels and where things intersect and where they match. And I think even that in itself will help people transform their philosophies or their beliefs or their understandings about something. But beyond that, if somebody is like excited about past lives, it's like, what do you want to do with that? I, for years, had like this yearning to have a past life regression done. I wanted to go to a past life. I think I was really consumed with who I might see there, like the relationships and some that I've had with people that are not in my life now. But I was just curious if they would show up in a regression. And that's the only time I've ever gone. This was like November 2013, I think. And that's the day when the wonderful past life regressionist or hypnotherapist, she's amazing. I refer her to all my friends. But that was the day that my guides showed me that I could do trance mediumship like Edgar Casey. So as soon as she talked me through, I had a voice booming out of, so I've never seen one of my own past lives in a past life regression. I've gotten snapshots and images and details from my team, but I'm really focused on this lifetime that we're in right now. And how can I utilize this information to support someone else or improve or, better my life, my understanding, or use it to teach other people. So I think it's I would like to see people look at it more than just like a novelty or a gift to say, I have it. Like, maybe you were Caesar in a past life, maybe you weren't, like, but how is that affecting you in this lifetime right now?
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And I actually really like the fact that you haven't gone back and looked at your own past.
Yeah.
Because everybody has different steps to get where they need to be. No two people are going to have the exact same journey. So for me, especially with the way I like to connect information, like you talked about, it's very much like code. I'm always trying to encrypt what's going on around me. So when I would have a situation that just didn't seem to fit with the rest of the pattern, I like going into past life regression, doing some kind of guided meditation. And I'll go in specifically to find out why that piece of code is not fitting with the rest of my message.
Oh, neat.
So I love going back. I've done maybe 20 or more past life regressions. It's very specific. I'm going in, I need to understand this relationship that I'm having.
Neat.
And I'll go in and I'll look at it. And for me, it's just adding more information into the collective puzzle. But it's completely relative. Everybody, you get the same information that you need to grow. We all just get it from different places.
Right.
And definitely with Edgar Casey being such an important part of my own awakening, his discussions on past lives, his readings on past lives, which is so profound. I felt that burning need to know more.
Sure.
And so I highly recommend anybody who feels that burning need, chase it. If you don't worry about it. It's not for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I know it's 5:00 and I feel the divine nudging me to have one more conversation. And this was coming in even this morning when I was kind of like asking the divine to help us have the most pertinent information today. And that is about like soulmates and twin flames and the familiarity that we may sense or feel when we meet someone. And the divine suggestion this morning was a lot of times when we meet someone, they might seem familiar to us at first. And so our soul has like this, oh, hey, like recognition. Oh, hey. But that doesn't always mean that this person is meant to be with you for a lifetime. Sometimes it's a season. And I think that sometimes people confuse that feeling, that recognition for you must be like my long-term compatibility, either mate or friendship. So I just wanted to put like that suggestion out there that, just because they're familiar doesn't mean they're forever.
Now that could be a bumper sticker. So what's your thought on soulmates and twin flames?
So I didn't have any thoughts about that before I met my husband. Soulmates, sure, I'd heard that term, and my affiliation of soulmate was kind of like you and I could be like, they were people that we knew from previous lifetimes that we had some sort of relationship with, and I'm guessing that we had somewhat of a fondness for each other. That was basically my concept around soulmates prior to 2016. So my husband and I, Riley, he and I were both, we were in an online Facebook group for entrepreneurs that were learning how to take our coaching businesses online. We both had desires to travel the world. So he's a neuroscience guy. And obviously, you see what I do, spirit-based mentorship. So I can't remember how, but we ended up in a conversation. He was posting things. He's really big. He teaches people about their values. And I find that kind of mentorship honorable and respectful. And the posts that he put in the group were really encouraging and inspiring and uplifting. I was actually in a relationship at the time. So there was no romantic inclination on my part at all. We just hit it off. We had similarities. We decided to do like a Zoom call together years ago. And he was talking about his value stuff and how he supports his clients. And because I come from the spiritual perspective, I assumed that it would be like oil and water, our conversations, but we were virtually having very similar conversations with our clients, but it was coming from two different angles, but we were arriving at the same destination point, which if you remember, being spirit trained and guardian angel taught, when I would receive like science validating data, I was like, give me more of this. Can you tell me what resource? And so I just ate up the angle, the perspective that he brought to my life. So long story short, my relationship ended up ending that I was in. And when I went through that relationship end, Riley and I went through a distancing period where we weren't speaking. And it was Archangel, because I just needed time and space to myself. And Archangel Chamuel actually came to me and said, you need to tell Riley about your feelings for him. And I wasn't consciously aware of having any. I was like, what?
Jumping the gun a little bit, Spirit.
What are you talking about? And so I sat with that for a few days. And so long story short, another month or so went by. I told Riley I had feelings for her. I told him we couldn't be friends anymore because I had feelings for him. Okay, bye. Because I'm that cool. And
was it a text or did you say it in person?
Right. Yeah, it was that too. Because he was in England and I was in America. And so anyway, he ended up saying like he got a word in edgewise and was like, but I have feelings for you too. And I had not anticipated that at all. I thought Archangel Chamuel was telling me I like needed to clean more out of my life. I didn't realize this was a new chapter. So then I needed another couple months to wrap my mind around that. And during that time out, in our guides, I had taught him divine communication while we were friends. And in that time out, his team told him we were twin flames, and my team told me that we were twin flames. And then we got mentored. I know it's going to sound really strange, but then we got mentored for like the next 6 months to a year by Jesus and Mary Magdalene.
It's beautiful.
It is. I would not call myself a twin flame expert, and I would not recommend that anyone searches for their twin flame. Yeah. My recommendation was before, and it still is, if people are seeking for their most compatible soulmate in this lifetime, that's how they frame it. Because twin flames are not always your most compatible long-term relationship partner. Yeah. They're not. A lot of times they're massive for soul growing in a lifetime, but they're not always your most compatible soulmate. Luckily, things with him and I worked out, but we would not be where we are if it wasn't for the mentorship by our guardian angels and our spirit guides. There's no way. The 4,367 miles that went on for years. And yeah, no, we wouldn't be where we are today if it wasn't for our divine support team and that communication. But thanks to the divine, we created courses together and we've done great work together. And I think that's the highest benefit if a twin flame union is in the highest order, and you work your stuff out. Yeah. Individually and collectively, then you bring great work to the world. And we do have genuinely an unconditional love for each other, meaning that if he woke up tomorrow and the life that we live and the person that I am is not the right fit for him, I would rather see him happy with whatever makes him happy than living a life of, obligation or whatever to me. So, and that's what I consider the most loving thing that you can, like, space you can be in for someone, is where you wish for their free will no matter what.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so much stigma and pressure attached to ideas like twin flames, to the point where if you seek for it, good luck. I really
never know what you're going to find.
Soulmates is such an interesting one, and this will be, I'll make this the last question because time so long. From Latrice, she's asking about her husband, they've been together for a total of 22 years.
Wow.
And she wants to know if a past life reading can tell her if they're meant to be together for this lifetime. And it's such a tricky question. And I absolutely want to get your opinion on this as well. I have done a past life for my husband and I, but not to figure out if we were twin flames or even soulmates, to see what kind of karmic lessons we needed to learn together. What was our relationship like past? Because that is speaking to our relationship now. And I needed to understand some of the dynamics that weren't making sense to me. So being my little coder, I'm like, I'm going back in the past.
Yeah, I'm going in.
And I looked at the relationship that we had there and the dynamic, and it makes my relationship now, it makes more sense. I see pieces of it I didn't before, which should lead to it being a happier, longer lasting relationship.
Right.
I don't know if there's any guarantee that a past life can tell you you're meant to be with somebody for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I wouldn't suggest that anyone gets any kind of reading to find out if they're meant to be. Free will is number one. Free will of both individuals. Is this the best match for you in this lifetime? That might be a different conversation. Yeah. And when I mentor people on divine communication, those are the kind of conversations they have with their A-teams. A lot of us, because maybe you had, and this has come up a lot for my clients, maybe you've had relationships in previous lifetimes with this particular spouse, and you guys have found a way to work together. There's a familiarity there. There's a comfort level there. And just because you have spun the clock around so many times doesn't mean that that's your happily ever after. Right. It just means that you guys know how to spend time together. You know how to do this thing, right? You figured out how to jump this rope. But it depends. I think it depends on what you want to experience in your lifetime. Do you want to be a very evolved soul? Do you want to be, are you more like content and complacent? Like, it's good, it's working, I don't want to rock the boat. Like, everybody has different things that that they thrive in. And so I think for me and my husband, we were both so passionate about the evolution of our spirit and soul growth. And so I think that's probably why in this lifetime, twin flame relationship was probably a match, because we're both so dedicated to our own personal development. And this way we would both be evolving in a similar pace. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I completely believe that soulmates, you just really dissect it. It's a soul who's a friend. or
Yeah.
not a friend, an enemy
Yeah.
that you can have life after life.
Yeah.
But we all have a purpose in each other's lives. Even if your relationship isn't your forever after, it does not mean it's not super, super important for you to have it and go through it and learn from it.
Right.
Past lives can absolutely help you get more understanding on those and what those lessons can be. So, you want to tell people what you're working on before we wrap it up and how they can get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I felt like there was something freebie I was going to drop in here. I know the connection webinar I feel like would be really good, but like I said, that's not coming up until June. I have a list of gifts that I put together right before this whole shift in our world happened, before the world got a virus. So I'll probably put that link on there. And if you sign up for one of my free gifts, and there's a bunch of different ones. If you're into archangel conversations, I've got one for that. If you're wanting some of my energy medicine, there's some of that. There's like a really cool mix. And I think the goddess Isis thing that I talked about is in there. The energy transfer or the downloads I received from her. So I'll probably put that link in the comments below. Other than that, I'm having really incredible conversations with people to see if they're the right fit for me to be their mentor for the Spirit Messenger training. I love teaching people how to have these conversations with their guardian angels and spirit guides. And the reason for that is because it's the stepping stone. It's usually the evolution that people need to get to before they start having conversations with God. But my hope is for everyone to have their own unique phone line to the divine, and that they're not asking anyone else these very important questions. Like, do you hear the value of me and my husband have been together for 22 years? Are we meant to be together? Like, that's such a powerful inquiry that I feel like the soul needs to deliberate on that, and that should not be handed over to a medium or an intuitive for a reader. That there's so much around that, and I think it's something like that. There's an evolutionary process that the soul would have to say yes to or no to. If I just hit you on the head and say you shall be a doctor tomorrow, that's usually something the soul has to subscribe to. We have to say yes to that. Maybe that shift happens over a period of time. Maybe you lose someone, then you get inspired by the medical field and you want to give back, but if you just woke up tomorrow and you went and got a reading and they said, oh, I see you being a doctor. Well, you're like, not today and not tomorrow. I'm not. So anyway, I really love having this conversation about past lives. I think they provide so much meaning and so much value to us. So if you have fears that you can't explain, if you have patterns that are repeating that you can't break, if you feel like you're stuck in a loop, or if you have fears in this lifetime showing up to do the magic that you want to do, because I feel like I help artists and healers and intuitives really access the magic to give the world their medicine. So I want to help you put you out there so that you can help the world. Those are the people that I love to work with, and I have like a mentorship called Spirit Tribe where I do that stuff through. So if anybody has any questions, reach out to me. I know that was a lot, and we went into a lot of topics today, but I always love talking to you. I feel like we almost inspire and encourage each other with some of this stuff.
Absolutely. Anytime I feel spirit coming in with like, no, write this down. Make sure you ask this. I know it's going to be a good conversation. Like, they're involved. They're actively involved.
Yeah.
And I've got a good name for your next class, and this is from Bonita. She called it the Direct Connection Hotline.
Connection hotline.
Back to Ty, if you want to learn your own direct connection hotline, if you want to learn how to plug in. And as you saying these things, I keep seeing like this old school operator that's like plugging all the different wires into the board. Like, let me connect you.
That's exactly what it's like. That's what my job is. And I love it. And I just want to stress the importance one more time. Everybody's connection, the way they access that information is completely different. And that's okay. And that's okay. I'm supposed to be the one to help them get over the hurdles and the humps so that they have more confidence with it. Direct connection hotline. I've written it down. I appreciate it. I love that. Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for doing this and dealing with the shift, this Corona shift. I think a year from now, we're going to be so grateful in a lot of ways that this is happening.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just the amount of things that I've been able to focus on that I wasn't before. I'm deeply, deeply grateful. Just that the earth can be quiet, frankly, for a little bit. It's going to have profound changes on everyone. And especially if they get to really take this time and tune in to themselves, build that connection. When you come out of quarantine, you're going to be a better person. You're going to be completely different than you ever thought possible.
I agree. And I, just so you know, like, it's not lost on me, like, how many people are perishing through this. And the divine has asked me, I'm going to be holding something called a crossover event where I help souls actually make that transition from, so that we don't have like earthbounds or discarnates, and we're going to kind of open a portal of light and really honor those souls so that they can go beyond to do their evolutionary process beyond the earth realm. And it's one of those things that Archangel Michael taught this to me years ago. He said one of the highest callings of a medium is to help souls do this crossover. And so because of my direct connection to source, I tend to be very great at opening the portal of light and kind of helping people send off. And sometimes there's an energy healing that needs to kind of go with it. And it helps grieving families to be able to honor the souls and let go. So I've got a couple different platforms. I'm going to be offering that throughout the month so that we can more appropriately say goodbye.
Yeah.
And thank
Count
you.
me in. I will support in any way that I can.
Yay. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you. And thank you, everybody else who's watching. Thank you so much for your comments, for just the participation, the hearts. I love seeing just the love
community
that comes into these. It's amazing. It's absolutely
good stuff.
So guys, until next time, I hope that I will have Ty back to talk more about intuition. So I hope you tune in for that one. Continue to share this message out, and I can't wait till next time, guys. Joking. Love and lights to all of you. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy.
Bye. If you want to find out what's coming out next on this channel, make sure that you're subscribed. And if you would like some more holy support, please check me out on patreon.com under Ty the Spirit Messenger. And if you would like to join our wonderful safe space on Facebook, we have a beautiful community called Be Your Own Guru. Until next time, bye-bye.